Welcome back, everybody. I have a distinct pleasure of speaking to somebody who we've all been watching and listening to for a long, long time. On the program is Jim Meskimen. He's an actor, he's a voice actor, he's an improviser, he's an artist. He has more credits on IMDb than any person that I have. As a matter of fact, he has combined more credits than two of the top people that I've had on my show in terms of their credits in addition to each other. So welcome to the program, Jim.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Alan. It's nice to talk to you. By the way, I just, full disclosure, I mean, IMDb credits can be everything from, a scene in a TV show where you walk in the door and go, is anybody going to eat this ham? To starring in a TV series. So a lot of those credits I have are pretty brief little appearances.
Hey, listen, those pretty brief appearances have been in some of the most loved popular shows of all time. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, to name one that you've done. Actually, more than a few brief appearances. But what I love about your career, and as I did my deep dive, I thought I knew you just because I've seen you on the screen for so long. And I knew about your impression work, but I had no idea just how much stuff you've done, how much voiceover stuff you've done. As a matter of fact, one of the first things that I've encountered is a very lovely actress, Hazuki Kato, who was on the show this week, is Garrison 7. And you're the voice of Garrison 7, the audiobook, and then you're in the movies as well. So I found that very synchronous.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I've not met her and not had the pleasure to meet her yet. That's a very interesting project, Garrison 7. And yeah, lately people on the radio will hear me as Colonel Sanders, and on television too, advertising fries. We got fries. I do Colonel Sanders' voice for a lot of their advertising.
I didn't even know that. See, and that's what I want everybody to walk away from from this interview, aside from a lot of fun that we're about to have, is just how much you put into this and how much you determine your own career. And I love, again, in one of the interviews, you were talking about your mom, Marion Ross, who's wonderfully known and iconic actress who we all know. But by watching her and by learning from her, you understood that if you have a career, great. If you don't have a career, do something about it and continue writing, continue exploring different avenues. And that's what you've done. That's why you have 300 credits. Honestly, and I'm not trying to appease you in any way, but I am heartened by seeing that you never stop. I'm looking at your YouTube videos, and you're putting out so much content that you are not really allowing for any break because you are making things happen. And that's what we have to do as actors. You can't just be an actor. You have to do many things. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's a really nice validation. And it's true. I learned a lot from watching my mom. And luckily, we have a similar temperament. My mother and I are rather similar, and similar interests, and I dare say a similar sense of humor. And so I'm just more comfortable being very energetic and attacking life rather than waiting. And as it turns out, philosophically, it's a lot more effective to reach out and to be proactive. And I think more and more people are waking up to that now, especially as it becomes like a matter of life and death. We all start to gravitate towards certain, realities.
Yeah, one of the videos that I watched from yours is the wash your hands video, which you're, again, I love it tremendously because you're utilizing the latest technology, which is the deepfake technology. You're utilizing social media, you're utilizing YouTube, you wrote it. It's a poem, which I love even more because I'm a poet, and to me, everything has to rhyme as a poetry.
Yeah,
and you're doing all of the impressions. It's a combination of all things. Like, it's similar to going to Cirque du Soleil, where your brain doesn't know which part to love because all of them are happening at the same time. It's great.
Wow, nice. Yeah, I thought that I really thought that would go viral, Alan. I tell you, what do you have to do? But still, it's a very nice little piece, and it's there's a guy in England that I work with that does the deep fake. I don't handle the technical part of it myself, the deep fake. It's really quite difficult to do it well. It's I know there are a lot of consumer level apps that handle it, I guess, but you can always kind of tell it's lower stiff and a little bit, funky. So my friend now, a guy named Sam in Manchester, England, Shamuk is his name, his handle anyway. He does all the deep fakery, and we've had a few of them do very, very well. And yeah, but that's a perfect example. I thought, well, now here's an opportunity to take a little more time, do something a little more of a quality nature, like writing the poem took a long time, as you can imagine, and then figuring out, well, who's going to say what, and rehearsing it, and finding a place to shoot, someone to help me shoot it. My friend Serge Ramelli, a photographer, helped shoot it, and it was very exciting. And I think it's a really nice and weird piece, because it's the first one I've done where two characters of mine are on the screen at the same time, as one is leaving, another's entering, and they have this kind of progression, which I didn't even know if technically we could do that. I'd seen it in movies, but I didn't know if it was affordable. Serge Ramelli figured it out, and it's a cute video, and it had a message. I thought, hey, it's got everything.
We're going to post it right below this video, so please
Great.
look in the description and check it out. We're going to link a YouTube, channel here. I've subscribed to it, obviously. I don't see why it wouldn't go viral. The only, two reasons why I think it might not is because the whole idea of wearing masks and washing hands has become so politicized that a part of the population simply wants to ignore it.
Very likely.
The second is just because there's so much content out there on YouTube. One really struggles to know what is going to go where. And I've looked at your SEO, because again, as a YouTuber, I look at that stuff, and I have the technology to see it. And your SEO is great. Your tags are great. Your description is great. Everything is set up. So why it didn't go viral? Now, I certainly got quite a bit of views, but it hasn't gotten to that status. Hopefully, it still will. I see everything that it should in order to do so.
Well, it's a fun game. When I got onto YouTube, I had some early success, and that's very buoying. When something actually goes viral, it's crazy. But you can't design it. All you can do, I think, is sort of treat it. What I do is I treat it as a kind of two things. It's a hobby because it's fun,
yep,
and it has no instant purpose, I guess, and as promotion. As free promotion that I actually get paid for my promotion. Whereas I used to spend a lot of money sending out video cassettes and audio cassettes to people to try to interest them in my skills. I'd spend thousands of dollars every year doing that. Now I get paid hundreds of dollars to promote myself, and with much more broad reaching kind of effect. I can get people in England and Switzerland and Sweden and South America and Europe to be interested in my work and contact me. It's just fun.
Yeah. And has that helped the Gympressions part of the business? Have people been reaching out for that?
Yeah. I think it just helps in general. It used to help when I could go and do live shows. It would help with that. And I went to Australia and some other places, Canada. So yeah, I just think it's good for actors to, well, it's good on many levels, right? Because to create a piece like that, or any of the more complex stuff that I do, you're acting, you're memorizing lines, you're taking on characters, you're lighting yourself, you're figuring out how to move, you're trying to embody another personality. That's acting, So it's good practice.
Yeah.
And you could make a friend.
Yes, well, you certainly made one in me because I've been a fan. Now I'm an avid fan. So it really
great.
that in that category. Speaking of, again, you have a varied background because you do a lot of voiceover work. You do impressions, and then you do on screen. I don't really even know which one started first. So I guess that's my question to you. Which one started? I think it was voiceover that started it, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was a visual artist actually in my first career. So when I went to New York in my 20s, I was working as an illustrator, designer, cartoonist. I'd been trained in fine art as well, but I didn't find it easy to leap into that world. Although I still do a little bit of it now, just for my own my own sake, my own sanity. But yeah, I started off. I was working for a company called Rankin Bass on a show called Thundercats. I was designing the cartoon characters for that show, and they knew I was studying improv, and they'd come to some of my improv shows, and they were very kind to me. And Jules Bass was really, really a sweetheart. And they said, "Hey, we got a new series that we're going to launch. If you'd like to audition for it, just come downstairs at 4 o'clock." And
Great.
I was like, I think I can fit that in. I think I can take a break and go down and audition for your series. So I booked it. So that was my first. And at the same time, I had been auditioning for radio commercials and TV voiceovers and stuff like that. But that was my first really massive kind of break, because we did 65 episodes of this, basically two small series, which was part of a 4-pack of silly shows that they were doing. And then from there, I built it up into commercials, TV commercials, and I did a lot of commercials in New York. It was in the 80s, and you could make a good living off of commercials at that time. It's harder today. It was pre-cable, there were 3 channels, so all the paychecks were very high. Yeah. And I was a young man. I was in my 20s. I was exactly the kind of Midwestern-looking person that advertisers desperately wanted to reach out to, and I had all this improv training. So I was kind of young and cocky and insouciant, and I didn't do voices particularly. Although I had the ability, I didn't do. It wasn't even really a major part of my business at all. Doing impressions, I did them in the shows that I did with my improv company, Interplay. But now it's pretty much a mainstay. It's pretty much almost all I do. Which is funny. It's because I've aged out of being someone that I think that advertisers generally want to sell to, with the caveat that I don't do certain kinds of advertising that advertisers would like very much to sell to a person of my age. I don't do over-the-counter drugs, the Viagras, the whatever. Turn your spleen upside down, daily pills, whatever. I don't do any of that stuff. So
yeah, it's a choice, right? So I certainly understand that. Thankfully, as I got into the acting world, because all of the commercials on TV, especially the commercials for all sorts of drugs, were really kind of, as an empath, they were really difficult for me to watch, because I had a feeling that these were actor driven, but you naturally have empathy for the people who are suffering. And as I got into the acting, as I learned from the background of what it's actually like, and these are actual actors who are doing this, and these are not people who are sick, it made my life a lot easier. But yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I believe, my wife and I, we pursue a very healthy lifestyle, and we just don't take those drugs. And even though we're in our 60s now, that's not our go-to solution. So I don't feel right promoting it. One time, story still flabbergasts me, but it's talking about voiceover, right? So I've told my agents, hey, listen, don't send me any sleeping pill commercials, because I'm not going to do them, right? And by accident, one time they sent me one, and I had not seen a script for decades. And in the little thing that I had to read, it said in the disclaimer at the bottom, it said, about this sleeping medication, you may find that you have been unconscious and driving after taking this medication. And I'm like, who would read such a thing? Who would actually kind of try to sugarcoat that with their nice announcer chops? It just blew my mind. Like, you're so zoned out that you might get in your car and drive around a little bit and not know of it.
It's sad, and I again try to think globally, right? If a person is really ill and they have a choice to make between living and having a whole host of potential side effects, you make the choice of living. I get it. But watching the commercials, and we're not going to name any of them, but we all know what we're talking about, and having a commercial showing people happy, and then hearing all of the side effects that blow your mind, is like, why would somebody actually do this? That's the part that always was interesting to me. So yeah. I haven't had a chance to do too many voiceover spots. So haven't encountered it yet. Haven't had the opportunity to decline. But political
Well,
spots as well.
the political
Uh,
spot's another one.
so,
Yeah, those are
yeah,
also very difficult. Yeah, you have to make your judgment about that. What are you going to do? What are you going to support? Are you just a complete whore? You know, I've
yeah,
I've done it all. You know, I've made all kinds of choices. But I've backed out of this particular election cycle 100%. Although I did do, I don't know, you probably saw the video I
I
did
saw
of
that. Yep.
that was for my own pleasure. It was for my own relief. I was like, let me imagine something. It felt like after the first debate, I had to respond. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes you have to respond to a work of art or an event or somebody's comment. And so that was my response. They're in the elevator and they really, really love each other.
Yes.
And a lot of people told
Um,
me they got a lot of relief from it. So
it's that Quentin Tarantino of taking some tragedy and alternate universing it to come to a good conclusion. Yeah,
that's
uh,
right. That's right. Yeah.
I definitely like that part. I do have a comment for you that I'm gonna say offline about that particular one that I've noticed
Okay.
that I haven't.
I look forward to it.
I didn't do the same thing, but I had to respond to what happened during.
During
Sure,
the fist fight.
we'll call it a debate.
Yeah.
So I had to write. I'm a writer. I had to write. So I had two choices, and I had a choice of writing my usual long, expose, and then starting a war on social media, or I could just write a couplet and make it so kind of inconspicuous where I can say what I feel about it, but then allow other people to come to their own conclusions as they're reading it. So I
Nice.
was really kind of proud of myself, and I put that up on Facebook. And it didn't generate a ton of excitement because I think people couldn't understand which way I was leaning.
You were
Uh,
sufficiently vague.
Right. And then the floods started, and then people
Wow.
started commenting with Trump 2020, and then you had people comparing Trump to Hitler, and you had all sorts of nonsense break out, and I had to delete the post because
Oh
that's not what
gosh.
the page is about. But yeah,
A simple
I
little
wrote.
couplet.
It was kind of a delayed bomb, but it did go off. So.
Awesome, man. That's great. It's very artful. It's very artful. I appreciate that impulse. I that's what I try to do too sometimes. Like, how can I be super artful and
Yeah.
not just stick a flag in the ground and not bloody anybody's nose, but somehow turn this into something that people can just kind of go, and because what happens is these events, they sort of stack up on you. And you're like carrying around this thought, and all you can think about is this horrible thing. You want something to just kind of go and have it disappear. And the arts do that for you. You can do that way. So we're always, you and I, we're trying to figure out how to do that.
We do. I learned over the last number of years that I have the ability to start conversations, and it's up to me to make sure that the conversations that I start are going to be ones that help foster the growth of humanity, not the decline of it. So
That's great.
yeah.
I'm glad you chose that side.
It's hard because I do have strong feelings, and I wish sometimes I allow myself the opportunity to actually write what I say, and then I go back and I remember Abraham Lincoln, that he would write the letters but never send them. So I have a lot of things in my computer that I have never posted for that
Wow.
particular reason. So
No, I
maybe
don't know that about Lincoln. That's interesting.
that's what I remember from the movie with the last movie that he was
Double
not.
D, Double D Lewis.
Yeah, that he dictated a letter to one of the generals stating his displeasure, and
Hmm.
then said no, don't send it. So had to get it out of his system, but didn't want to do anything more with it. So when did you start doing? I know you've mentioned during your improv kind of
Yeah.
career you were doing impressions, but when did you start doing more and more impressions? And what was your first one that you ever did?
Oh, well, on to the second question first. So I think I get asked this question a lot, and I usually say that, and I haven't found a better answer really. Going way back into when I was a toddler, and I think I did the Cowardly Lion from Wizard of Oz, the Bert Lahr character. Pretty sure I tried to emulate that. And when I got started in earnest in really pursuing the impressionist path, or the one that, anyway, the impressionist path that I've sort of created, because I would do them on and off. In fact, it's what got me onto the Fresh Prince. You mentioned the Fresh Prince a while ago. I had been on an episode of Whose Line, and I'd done some impressions on that show.
Yeah.
And the Whose Line people had come from England, and they came to New York, and they watched me perform with my improv company, and where I did quite a lot of impressions in the show. And so they wanted to integrate that into the show. And then the Fresh Prince people saw that, and I had a friend who was a producer on the show, the late Jeff Pollock, and he asked me to come out, and it was my impressions that sort of were a nice hook for them. And so they made me Will Smith's Western philosophy professor, who also did impressions. And it was really a pilot for me. Actually, it could have been a series had I pursued it. That's another story. But so that was my entryway into doing them on television. But then what I would do is I would just kind of forget about it. I would, and I think this is a flaw. I had a very successful thing, and then I would kind of get interested in other things. I was doing other interesting things. I was doing improv with my company, and I wanted to be a serious actor too, like just playing a guy rather like myself and not really imitating anybody. So I would go off in those different directions. I also had a very thriving commercial career where I was a spokesman for different companies. And so I got distracted easily by shiny things. And then it started to get in 2000, all the way up into 2008, when the world first melted down, and we thought, wow, how that was really challenging. 2008. Now we would love to be in 2008, right? Back then I went, oh my God, I got to do something. Everything has stopped, and it really had stopped for me. I mean, clients were not advertising; they were all just scared to death, and even my regular clients were like, we're not sure what we're going to do. And I'm like, oh my God. So I thought I will do like what you mentioned before. I will do what my mother does, or had done in those days, which was, if she was not working on a TV show, she would go and do a play. And I don't really have any lines into the theatrical community particularly, but I know I can always put on my own show. So I constructed a new show, and I'd done one-man shows with impressions and things ongoing every now and then, just to kind of stir things up. But I started it in earnest in, I'd say, 2008, 2009, and it was difficult to put together. It was hard for me. But I wrote it. Writing is hard, and also you're writing for an audience that isn't there, who you don't know who they are, with material like it should be pleasant, it should be funny. So I tested a little bit, but I basically just kind of leaped into it. Okay. And then to promote the show, this is a long story, I'm sorry, but to promote the show, I thought there's this YouTube thing, and I had done a little bit on YouTube, but not too much. I didn't really understand it very much. So I thought, well, I'll do a little kind of a commercial advertising my show, and maybe I'll do this Shakespeare and celebrity voices that I do in the show, and I've done for years, and maybe that'll interest people in coming to see the show. And that one went legitimately viral and just really took off, and it was shocking and super fun, and it opened up doors that are still opening for me, frankly, and that was in 2011. So I didn't really, then I disciplined myself. I said, all right, it is impressions, idiot. Impressions are what people want to buy from you. That's what they want to see you do. They'll put up with the other stuff, but right now, just crank on the impressions. And that was when I really began to finally, at age 40 something, 48, 49, really, really cranking on the impressions.
And I love them. And I've lost count of how many of your impressions I've seen, but if you had to kind of say not just which one is your favorite to do, but which one do you, as the artist, thinks that it's your best impression, which one would that be?
Well, I tell you, I've not heard a lot of people do Tommy Lee Jones other than Tommy Lee Jones himself. And so I think that, insofar as an impressionist can own an impression, I think I own this one.
Although there are
Yeah.
lots of other people that do it. The great Fred Tatasciore is another guy that's fantastic and has many more IMDb credits than I do. And George W. Bush, a lot of people do George W. Bush as well, but I don't think I don't remember who they are. And then
Yes.
Colin Firth is another one that I rather like to do. And mainly I am called upon to do Colin Firth when he has some ADR to do, or they need Colin Firth to say something in a trailer and they can't afford him or isn't available. And then they'll sometimes come to me. I did quite a lot of Colin Firth for the 1917 campaign for that film, because he's got that, he lays out a lot of exposition in that movie that they could use in trailers, but a lot of it was really long and they wanted just a little thing. So
Yeah.
I had to provide a lot of versions of him saying, "You'll be going out to find your brother," you know.
That's amazing. I love that, and then I love your Robin, by the way, as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Robin Williams. Yes, I'm still doing every now and then the Blue Genie for Disney.
Yeah.
Different applications. I always consider it a great honor to pick up the Robin Williams mantle. Which reminds me, I got to pick up my mantle at the cleaners later.
Yes. What impressed me, and again, good impressionists really do this, but they tap into the energy and they tap into the flow of who the person is. It's not just the mannerisms, and it's not just kind of the facial features. You with the De Niro, for instance, but it's that flow and it's that energy. And as soon as you switch, you were George, for instance, and then you switch into Robin, and then your brain goes on fire, and
Yeah,
you
right.
tap into that. That is most impressive to me, because that ability to switch on a dime and go into a different energy, that what constitutes a great actor to me. So
Thank you. Well, I've been put in a little plug for my wife's acting school here. I've been
yeah,
studying acting kind of, I would say, sort of loosely over the years. I always felt like it was something that I already kind of knew. Of course, that's a great barrier to learning.
yes,
But my wife has a school where she teaches a completely revolutionary style of acting that cuts down to really the barest fundamentals and gets the point of. And I've adopted the point of view completely because I think it's great. The school is called the Acting Center, by the way, in Los Angeles, and I can give you a link to it.
please
But
do.
what I've learned is that it's all about being the other person. It's being someone that you're not.
Yeah,
So that includes so much, and what you're talking about, energies and so forth. A person has so many facets. All of us are pretty infinite universes of stuff. We've got our background, our opinions, we've got our foibles, we've got our emotions of the moment. We've got a lot going on. So when you are trying to be another person, it's a wonderful expedition. It's a wonderful investigation. And so I use that automatically with my impressions. And I always mention that impressions are very easy to do of people that you like, people you have affinity for, people that you don't mind occupying the same space as, or nearly the same space as, right? And so it's difficult to do an impression of someone you loathe because you're not willing to accept them in the first place. So why would you want to be in their space or act like them unless you're trying to mock them? And that's different. That's those impressions are not quite as good. For instance, Alec Baldwin, who I respect very much, I don't think he does a very good President Trump. I don't think he sounds like him particularly well, as much as people who seem to at least enjoy being him. Let's say there are some other impressionists that I think do a more technically a better sounding job. Anyway, that may be overstepping, but so what I think is the most the place where acting and impressions overlap and really convene is on this issue of, can you be that other person? And that means being them fully, being them in 360 degrees, the body, the feet, the way they hold their hands. And when you can make that leap, when you have the freedom, let's say, to make that leap and to just act like that other person, so that it feels like that to you, then you can make some incredible discoveries.
Yeah, it's true, and it's I think that's what is missing in when people are talking about acting and applying different techniques. You always hear you have to be instead of act, but the path to being sometimes gets very confusing, and more people who get into it without all of that outside baggage of what you're supposed to do, and they just instinctively and intuitively snap into it, those are the people that become successful, and we're like, oh my God, they're a natural. Yes,
Yeah.
but they also don't have to deal with all of the other crap that takes as an actor. You start here and then you start accumulating it, and then finally you get back to here and you throw it away.
Yeah,
So
it's like my mother's a great example of that. Marion Ross. I didn't realize she did this until recently, but she would go and sort of seek out people that were like her character, or she would talk to the person that she was portraying, if they were still alive or something like that. And in general, my mother is very interested in other people, very interested in other people. And I think the best actors are. They're always watching. They're willing to be anybody who's in front of them practically. In fact, you can notice sometimes with certain actors, as you talk to them, if you're in person with them, they're kind of, particularly not so much on Zoom, perhaps, but in person, they're like, they're so paying attention to you. They're like being you as you're talking. I've talked to actors like that, right? And it's
yep,
like, and I've done it too.
yeah.
So, so if you have that kind of attitude or that kind of approach to life, you're already doing quite a bit of the work, I think.
I agree with you completely, and that is a case in point of why my wife hates going to Hugh Grant films, because as I watch Hugh Grant films,
You
then for the
slowly turn into Hugh Grant.
next week I'm Hugh Grant, and she doesn't enjoy me doing accents. She just wants me to be me, which is a very difficult thing to do. Thankfully, my kids enjoy it, so I kind of save it for them, and then now all of my kids are doing accents, which I'm really really proud of. But yeah, it's an immersive experience, and I think me being an immigrant and me coming here at 14 from Ukraine, I hear from people that I don't have an accent. I still think I hear an accent, but I think one of the reasons why people may say that is because of something within the ear or something just within me that has the ability to pick things up a little quicker and then to utilize it. Because when I do accents, my Russian accent does not come through at all because I am plugged into that accent. When I'm just being myself, then you can hear some of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting how it works.
From Ukraine. Interesting. Yeah, I did detect an accent. For some reason I thought maybe he's from Montreal, but
I agree with you.
yeah.
I hear that. And speaking of a Russian accent, you have to do one, right? Because in your next one of your next films, I think it's called Going West, right? Or did I have
Right.
that name?
Going west. Yeah.
Yeah,
Alexander
well,
Hahn film.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
playing.
We haven't talked about what they want to do with that, with the accent on that. I haven't. We're not quite very close to filming yet, but Alexander Hahn is a really funny filmmaker,
Yeah.
and I would love to be in this film. So we'll see what happens with the accent.
The
I will
idea
try,
of it.
for me, I have few Russian friends, so I will probably get together with them and to talk about things and to kind of absorb what it is they're saying and how they're talking. So
Yeah, you'll be able to pick it up. And I think what Robin, by the way, what Robin did for One Flew Over is he actually he had a Russian speaking coach and he learned Russian. So the accent came as a natural part of him actually learning the language. So I'm not sure you want to go to that extent, but
yeah, I'm
yeah,
not much of a polyglot, but yeah, I think it would be very useful, very, very useful. Yeah, I mean, it's funny how you've probably noticed this too, but I've noticed about accents that they have everything to do with where in the world obviously people are, but also the temperature, the dryness of an area, and all these things influence very much the way people express themselves. And I think it's fascinating. My mother again turned me on to that. I mean, she would obviously do accents a lot. I don't think every mother does this, but she would imitate people and their accents and do British accents and stuff. And I early on learned that it's fun. It's a fun activity to do it, and that you don't make fun of people, but it's that what an interesting game it is to try to figure out what kind of levers do I have to put in here and pull, and what sort of things do I constrict, and what kind of vowels do I leave out, or consonants do I hit. You know, it's like it's a fun kind of game to learn how to speak like that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned this, that again, it comes from the parents, right? My dad and I played the game of rhyme because he's a poet. All of his friends are poets, and again, come from the former Soviet Union, where there is a lot of emphasis on poetry. All the poems have to rhyme. That was a game that we played when I was a child, and because of that, to me, it was a natural expression. So if I wanted to express myself, of course I would express myself poetically, and of course it has to rhyme. So it became a part of my life, just like accents now are fueling your career. It's
Yeah, that's wonderful. My dad was a kind of a poet too, and loved poetry, and would read poetry out to us all the time. And yeah, so I have a great affinity for poetry. I think a lot of it may be. I'm going out on a limb here, but it may be something that all suppressed cultures share, is a love of the artfully put together expression that can be done with nothing, since you don't have anything. They've taken everything away from you, but you do have a vocabulary, and you do have maybe a scrap of paper to write it on, and the purpose of your and the brevity are very important. And so that's what, so much of poetry, like rap music, is basically poetry, right? From a very suppressed culture. So I'm just beginning this thesis, but I think it has a lot of merit.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense. I would explore that thesis further. One of your characters that you created, the professor, could be using that for his
Professor Nestor Jackdaws. Yeah, that was my first foray into YouTube, was Professor Nestor, and I knew I could do a lot of content with him because he can just go. I don't prep, I don't think things through very much. I just kind of turn him on. That's it. And that is a character based on a man I knew who looked nothing like me, but he was a professor that I had in the University of California, Santa Cruz, and his name was Jasper Rose. And he actually had long gray tresses of hair and a little Van Dyke beard and no glasses, but these eyebrows that were like Mr. Spock on steroids. And he was tall, and he wore tweed and jeans and carried a cane. I mean, he was just so full of character, and a bow tie as well. And I took about 5 different courses with him. The last one was in his home, where he was a book collector, and we did a private, I don't know, there were probably 4 or 5 of us in his class doing a book illustration, a study of book illustration. Anyway, his character and his personality was so great that I would sit in the lecture hall and just, like you say with Hugh Grant, for several hours afterwards, when I was completely like Jasper Rose, and there was no difference, my dear boy, between him and I. So years later, decades later, it's so strange that he had such an impact on me that I never forgot that beingness, if you will. Decades later, when I needed to create a character for something, I was like, oh, well, I could do that. And I had it, and then I adjusted it over the years to make it more my own. I got these teeth made; they're dreadful little teeth, and
the part that kills me in the best way is that at the end, the smile. His smile is perfect. That part, it says everything about the character that you want to know. It's great.
I'm so glad.
Well, okay, so I wanted to ask you a few more questions, and again, I'm barely getting to my questions, but I don't care. This is too much fun. So you've from a pure acting perspective, right? So you having this ability to tap into the energy of the person, you having the understanding of the way that the voice is, the way that the person carries himself. All of that is a part of getting to know the character. You having that talent and that ability, do you find that it has helped you in your on-screen, just pure acting career, or do people perceive you in a certain way and you don't get a chance to explore that on screen?
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think it's been an impediment at all.
Okay.
I think it just makes I mean, casting people are aware of me. I've been in this town for quite a while,
Right.
and I think they also know that I do a lot of impressions. I think I'm mostly known for that, and so I get these weird opportunities that other people wouldn't get because I can do those impressions. I think the biggest impediment for me is that it's easier to, in some ways, to take on the personality of a well-known celebrity than it is someone who is not so well known and that you have to really research and get to know and discover. You know, I'm a bit lazy like a lot of people, and I guess I have my comfort zone and so forth. So I still have a kind of a tendency, and I'm still trying to be a really great actor, and I realize I'm still so many miles away from that. But I have a tendency when I get a script to go, oh, I know what this character is. I've seen this guy in movies lots of times. He's the funny storekeeper who, when the hero comes in, fumfers around and wastes his time. And I'm like, well, okay, hold on. Let's see. Maybe this guy is not just somebody you've seen in a movie before. Maybe this guy is a real guy, you know, and find something rich and specific. Because I realize if I take that approach, there's probably a lot of guys that are taking that approach. And so a lot of us inevitably are winding up playing the same guy in the audition. Yeah. And that, of course, is not very helpful for casting. You know, it doesn't help them very much, and it doesn't help you very much because you're suddenly in competition with, you know, everyone's put on a gray suit. Here I am in my gray suit. Like, okay, well, we're going to pick that guy because he's been on a series before, you know. Yeah. So I think the staying interested, creating interest, that is, for me, strangely, is one of the biggest barriers. I have to get interested. I have to, and you manufacture your own interest. It's not like it comes delivered to you like Amazon. You have to decide, like everything else today, you have to decide to become interested in something and to invest yourself in it. And that includes some character you've never heard of, or wow, this is a really strange thing, or something that's tremendously familiar. And you're like, well, how can I find a new angle on this? And that's what I think the great actors do. They find something and you're like, wow, what an interesting choice. Nobody in the world would have made that choice. You know, when Christopher Walken does a part, it's not always Christopher Walken. You know, Al Pacino or these guys, they make very specific choices that are based on them being interested enough to look for them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. The last question on the impressions before I move on to some other things, but who is your favorite impressionist out there today that is working?
Oh, out there today that I enjoy that is working. Gee, I just worked with one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites. Mm-hmm. There's a guy named Piotr Michael who is terrific. Okay. And Ross Marquand of The Walking Dead is terrific.
Yes.
And I worked with both of them on a series. There's a series on Amazon Prime called Impress Me, which is about impressionists, and that I starred in, and Ross and Piotr. Angela Hoover is a wonderful female and impressionist, and Christina Bianco is a wonderful female impressionist. Melissa Villaseñor, terrific.
Yep.
She's on Saturday Night Live, or was anyway, and probably still is. Mm-hmm. And there's a young guy that I just met that's terrific named Chris Maroy. Okay. He's just getting started out, but he showed me a video recently that spurred me to create a video of my own on his theme called Cineppressions. And Frank Caliendo is great. I would say of the famous ones,
Right.
you know, you can't beat Rich Little. You cannot beat Rich Little. You have to. I mean, these days his repertoire is much more limited because he's probably 80 years old now, and his equipment is not what it was.
Right.
But that's like asking Michael Jordan to, you know,
Yeah, dunk.
to do something today. Like, you know, give the guy a break. He was the most amazing in history. And Rich Little was the most amazing impressionist in history. He came along at a particular time when television was young, when there were this, you know, a vast library of movie stars that had very distinctive voices, and he got to meet them, and you know, you're in person with John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart, and you know, come on, that's like being given the keys to the toy box, and he just has a particular amazing gift for mimicry that I don't think will ever be topped. So I got to meet him a couple times finally. I sought him out and at least got to shake his hand and tell him how much I admired him.
That's great. Okay. The again, out of all of your projects that you have been on, and this is a ridiculous question given given your history and the amount of work that you've done, if you had to pick out one project that you would say was your favorite, which one would that be?
I would say it was The Grinch, working on The Grinch, Ron Howard's The Grinch That Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey. I worked on it it was good in a lot of ways. It was good. I worked for 4 months on that movie, which is not too often that you're employed in a movie for 4 months. And it appealed to me on many levels. It was fun to be working. It was great to be working with Ron Howard again. I've done 5 films with Ron Howard. It was great to work with Jim Carrey. I met amazing people on that show. Our cast was an interesting mixture of beautiful actors, you know, wonderful circus performers, stunt people, Cirque du Soleil people, you know, great comedians, great acrobats, all of whom, you know, I got to sit around and talk to all day long. Plus makeup artists. We had 50 makeup artists. I met all the best makeup artists in Hollywood at that time.
Wow.
Some of them who were very young and have gone on to have amazing careers, like Christian Tinsley. Other people like Rick Baker, who was the head of the whole thing, who is now retired and is just messing around, as far as I can tell, creating whatever the hell he wants to on Instagram. And I love the whole process of being in contact with these artists. Kazuhiro, the guy who designed Winston Churchill's makeup for the Gary Oldman Winston Churchill makeup and won an Oscar for that. I spent eight days with Kazu while he was doing makeup tests on my character, and that was an amazing experience. And again, he was a fairly young man at that time. And you know, I'm an artist myself. I love to sculpt. I love to paint. I saw what they were doing, and I felt like, oh wow, this is great. I get to observe artwork from the point of view of the work of art itself. This is very cool, you know. And it was creative, and there was a lot of creative stuff going on the set too. And Ron Howard was very kind and let me improvise stuff, and not a whole lot of it made it in the movie, but I think we shot about 3 movies worth of film on that in 4 months. There's big sequences that I definitely remember we shot and are nowhere in the film. So that one was really interesting on many levels.
Perfect. Any of it made on Blu-ray, or you know, a anniversary Blu-ray edition where you know all that stuff is in? I don't know.
Probably. There's probably some behind the scenes. I think there's some crazy behind the scenes stuff like that, and additional scenes. I'm sure. Yeah, I haven't researched it, but we shot a lot of stuff. They were just throwing everything. It was a big budget movie. Big stage. Oh, the other part was walking around Whoville, this enormous. That was the biggest stage at Universal, and they had constructed this. Michael Kornblith had constructed this amazing city, you know, and every shop had all kinds of little products in it that were Who based, and there was just art direction down to the square inch that you could walk around and kind of observe, and crazy. It was just really super fun. I felt very, very fortunate.
Yeah, as an actor, it certainly puts you into that environment, much quicker. I love
And I
that.
had big shoes. I had these enormous big clown shoes. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I wish I had those shoes today. They're like double my feet, and nice patent leather cop shoes, and then little teeth. I had funny little teeth and fake ears, long eyelashes. It was great.
Awesome. Jim Carrey, I think, is one of the people that initially, when I started acting, my whole acting was, Jim Carrey, his earlier films where he's just huge. And I thought that's what acting is. And very quickly I learned that no, that's not exactly what you want to do.
Well,
Um,
not for every character, for sure. Well, I mean, talk about acting. I mean, that is acting. It is so broad. There's that early Jim Carrey stuff, the Ace Ventura stuff. But I feel like he was being a cartoon character,
yeah,
and everything was that level of intensity and sort of shallowness, which
mhm.
was hilariously funny.
Yeah, still love those movies. It's one of those things where if it comes on TV, I'm gonna watch it.
There's that scene in Ace Ventura 2 when
Mhm.
he is inside that fake rhino and
Yeah,
crawling out. Oh my God. That is one of the craziest things. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm so glad he did that.
yeah. People have mentioned that I have a little gym there, and it's like,
Uh-huh.
so I do that. I do that from time to time. But yeah, it's I love his work, and he's watching him when he was actually embodying the character and watching how small and precise he was. He's a really, really talented actor.
Very
So
talented. Very
yeah.
nice guy.
What's the weirdest thing that ever happened to you on a set?
Wow. Weirdest thing that ever happened to me on set. Uh, Thinking about a time when I got booked to do a commercial. A friend of mine said, "Look, this is not going to be an easy shoot, but we'd like, you could do this if you want to. It doesn't pay a lot, but it's kind of challenging, And I said, well, I like a challenge. I'm an actor. I like a challenge. So I get there, went to Florida, and the conceit was that I was strapped to the wing of an airplane like a biplane, and there were things flying by me and disappearing into the distance. And
Yeah.
this is pre-digital age. So he had set up a practical rig where I was laying on my back on a kind of a girder,
Mhm.
for want of a better word, uh, that was hanging out over the stage floor by about, I want to say 30, 35 feet. And
Okay.
they were up on the catwalk with the camera looking down at me, so that there was a fairly large space behind me that they could drop things and they would recede into the background,
Yeah.
into the distance, and hit the floor, obviously. And then they had fans on me from either side.
Yeah.
But I was hanging on. I mean, I was strapped in pretty good, but it would be like if you were on your back on a kind of a log up over a chasm.
Yeah.
And I found that intellectually I was fine with it.
Yeah.
But when I got my body up there, my body was saying,
Yeah.
"We have to get down. We have to get down now." And so I said, "All right." My body was just freaking out. And I'm like, "We're not going to be able to do this unless I can master this." So I said, "Just get me a rope and hang the rope down next to me. And in between takes, I will allow the body to hang onto the rope
Mhm.
and it'll chill it out."
Yeah.
And that's how we solved it. Even though the rope would have been of no use, but I wasn't going to fall anyway. It really looked like I could have. And the
Yeah.
body was totally convinced. I refer to the body as distinct from myself because in that state it was. I was not terrified. I knew the guy showed me, here it is, you're strapped in. We'll wheel you up there. We'll crank you up into that position. Then we'll shoot. I'm like, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the body didn't believe it.
It's Yeah, I felt the same way, on the top of the Willis Tower, not the Sears
Oh yeah.
Tower. We're still referring to it as such. When you go outside into that cube, and you're basically, you're looking down, and you're intellectually, that everything is okay, but as you're making that step, there is that thing in your body says no, no, and you have to overcome it,
Yeah.
and to train your body that it's okay and you're fine. Yeah, I was fighting that pretty well.
Yeah, that reminds me of Will Smith. You know, when Will Smith turned 50, we were talking about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air before. When he turned 50, I don't know if you saw, he challenged himself and raised money for charity by bungee jumping out of a helicopter over the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
And you
I
can see
did
as
see
he
that.
approaches, he's being videoed the whole way. And
Yeah.
I've never seen a more serious Will Smith leading up to that moment. And then complete exuberance when he gets it over with. But up until that point, he's kind of like, you can say, like, wow, he's either going to throw up or he's going to start crying.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But he had to overcome it too.
Yeah, I'm not that brave. I will look at the people fondly with admiration as they're jumping, and I will say no thanks. I When we went ziplining, it took me a while just to go ziplining, and the only reason why I went the first time is because my 5-year-old son went in front of me, and I didn't want to look like an idiot. My 5-year-old son, and he's in, even at that age, they're just so intelligent where he knew that he didn't want to jump, but he wanted to do it. So he just kind of looked at the person who was there and he said, "Can you just push me off?" And the guy's like, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, push me off."
Just
And
push
he
me.
went, he was very happy. And for me, I'm standing there, I'm the last one, everybody's looking up at me. My little boy had just done it. And every part of me wanted to just say, "No, thank you, I'm going down."
Yeah.
Uh, I had to force myself to just put it on and literally jump. I couldn't think anymore. I just had to literally make that leap. And of course, it was fine. And after that, we've gone, many times in different locations. I've done it, and I'm fine. But that whole body perception, you have to get over it, and it's difficult. Yeah.
Was it
Um,
exhilarating?
He was. And it's one of those moments where you're overcoming fear. And like on the other side of fear is where you find more, you find out more about yourself, and you feel so great having done it that you think that you can accomplish everything in life. So it's that drive, that even those small little things that make you feel completely exhilarating, and that whole idea of what else can I do now to overcome my other fears. And one of those was swimming with the sharks, and we went to I think Dominican, and there was a huge kind of tank, in the ocean with their bottom feeders, and they're not going to bite you unless you really just stick your arm in their mouth. I forgot what they're called, nurse sharks.
Nurse sharks.
They're large. I mean, these are like 10, 15 feet nurse sharks, and there were about 15 of them. And me and my whole family went into this tank and swam around and were swimming towards the sharks. And as you're doing that, they tell you it's fine, they've been fed, they don't care about humans. But seeing that thing and swimming towards it, and then realizing that not only am I doing this to myself, I'm doing this to my wife and children. And you just have to put all of those thoughts out of your mind and do it. And then you feel like, oh my God, I just swim with the sharks. I know it's not the Great Barrier Reef, and I know it's not that level, but I got there. I'm okay. There's something to it. It's a really weird thing to do to yourself.
Cage go in the water. Sharks in the water. You go in the cage. Whole family in the cage. Farewell and adieu, dear fair Spanish ladies.
Yeah. Oh my God. Last question for you. If you had a chance to go and talk to a young version of yourself that's just starting in acting and give one piece of acting advice, what would that be?
Stick to impressions.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Do more.
Hey,
Yeah, do more impressions. Yeah.
that's great. Which may or may not be the title of this episode. Stick to impressions.
Stick to impressions.
Although it would sound judgmental, and you're really good at other things, so I probably won't use it. Yeah.
Thank
Well, thank you so much. It's such
Yeah,
a pleasure.
I appreciate it, Alan. You're a very empathetic person. I wish you a lot of luck with your show. It's been wonderful talking to you, and it's
Thank you.
really appreciate all the things that you told me.
Thank you, sir. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. I know you're having as much fun as we are, watching these, and we love doing these. So thank you.